Will the Rockets change under new ownership? Can the Bucks get back into contention in the East? What does the average NBA player look like? The only question left is, say it with me, you win? Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to the B-Ball Breakdown Podcast. I am pleased to bring on the show today, as always, Dave Dufour. Dave, we missed yesterday's Labor Day, but obviously I'm sure everyone else was busy in the pool and whatnot, and we're too busy listening to our podcast anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I was too busy relaxing, watching Netflix.
I played tennis, and I had played tennis a few weeks ago, and it was fine. And I played yesterday, and I was really rusty playing singles and was screaming and yelling on the court. And, I'm kind of ashamed of myself now for doing all the things that I shouldn't be doing out there. And it didn't help me, by the way. Yelling and screaming did not help my tennis game at all.
I'm shocked. You know, like when coaches yell at players, it always helps, right? So
yeah, right. Yeah. But it's like, shocked. You know, I'm much better when I don't hit the ball in the net on like winners that should be winners for me. Like a nice serve and come in the ball, I just finish the point, and I'm like just missing every one of those shots. And I just, after like about 8 or 9 of them, I just couldn't take it anymore.
Well, the real question is, when are we going to start tennis breakdown?
Yeah. I would love to do that. I mean, we could do all sorts of fun stuff with that. So speaking of the U.S. Open as well, going full bore, I'll check some of that out. But we're talking about basketball. And we are in the dregs of the season right now, or the non-season, if you will. The only news I think we can even talk about is that the Rockets were sold to somebody else that's really rich in Houston.
That's right. Tillman Fertitta bought the Rockets for a record $2.2 billion. And, you know, that's the number 4 media market in America, Houston. And not to mention how popular they are in China. I have to think that this guy got a deal at $2.2 billion, right? Like the team may very well be worth 3.5, right? But I mean, I guess you get what the market dictates. I guess congratulations to Tillman Fertitta. You know,
I mean, it's not like he spent that much money. He probably put 20% down, whatever.
And they've got a group of some sort. I know that they were trying to get Beyonce, they were trying to get Yao Ming involved. So, we'll see what that group looks like.
Do you know what Tillman Fertitta did to make all his money?
Well, hang on. Is he not one of the Fertittas that he's one of the Fertitta brothers. So they used to own the UFC.
Oh, okay.
Right?
I don't know. I'm just asking.
I'm assuming. I'm now Googling it.
Yeah, right.
We could have done this ahead of time.
Yeah. He's an American businessman and television personality. Landry's Inc., one of the largest restaurant corporations in the United States. So, and Wikipedia has already updated his page to say that he purchased it. So, okay, so that's good to know. So he knows how to manage restaurants, and that could very well help the service industry.
There's a lot of rich Fertittas out there because he's actually not one of the Fertitta brothers that own the UFC. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. Well, anyhow, well, good for them. I was kind of asking you earlier if you think that that means that Daryl Morey's job is potentially in jeopardy because obviously Les Alexander, the previous owner, was all in on Morey, and he had to complete another job. What's it called when you have job security? Thank you.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about now?
I actually he is one of the Fertitta brothers. Sorry. There you go, because he was a shareholder of the Golden Nugget Hotel. I think that I think he's safe. I don't think a new owner comes in, buys a team, and says, you know what, the second winningest franchise in the last 10 years or whatever, which is since Daryl's been there. Let's fire the GM. You know what I mean? Like,
and I don't even mean like now. I'm just thinking like
Like, is he going to have a shorter leash? No, I don't think so. I think Daryl Morey is the kind of guy. I think he could be the Houston GM for the rest of the time that he wants to be the Houston GM.
Okay.
I actually, I think he wants to own a team, and I want to say he was involved, and I don't know this for sure, but I heard rumors that he was actually involved trying to get a group together to purchase the Rockets. But you need at least $1 billion to get to the table on that. So it didn't happen. But yeah, I think he's fine. I mean, he's probably the best GM in basketball. I can't imagine, letting that guy go. I mean, if you look at the job he's done in the last 10 years, when he took over, it was Yao and Tracy McGrady, and of course they got hurt. And he pieced together this team that really pushed the Lakers. Yeah.
Literally and physically, right? Literally, whatever that we want to call it. Yeah, I'll never forget that the Ron Artest. He just had something that he had to tell Kobe, and he had to make sure that Kobe was listening.
That's right. Yeah, but also, I mean, like Daryl Morey, like finding Chuck Hayes, right? Like that's the kind of thing that Daryl Morey was able to do back in the day. And nowadays, it's a little bit more difficult because everyone's kind of, following the same playbooks. But I just think that when you look at his track record, I mean, he engineered the James Harden trade. They never tanked. They never have gone below 500. Yeah. He signed Dwight Howard, which whether it worked out or not is debatable, but still signing a superstar is a big deal. And then, getting Chris Paul. And I just think that, he's probably been the most successful GM that we've had since he's been a GM. So, yeah, I think he's going to be fine.
All right, that's well, good to know.
Let's put it this way: if I was a part of the group buying the Houston Rockets, I would look at Daryl Morey as part of the asset package.
For sure.
So
now, do you think that the Carmelo to the Houston thing is completely dead?
According to my sources, no, it's not dead.
Okay, we have a quote for Twitter.
No. Yeah, according to my sources, no, it's not dead. But then again, like I think right, nothing's ever dead. I think if we could talk about Melo for a minute, we haven't heard anything in the last 2 weeks, right? Like we haven't heard any news. Today, something popped up about Milwaukee as a potential third team involving Jabari Parker, and I think Jabari Parker's value is just nothing right now.
That's too bad. He's got value.
He's so good. I know. Well, to us, he has value, and he has value theoretically, but we don't know how he's going to bounce back from that second knee surgery.
Well, remind me, is it the same knee?
It's the same knee, yeah. And that's problematic because he's also, I think he relies on his athleticism more than we think because he's not really a great shooter. Now, if he comes back and he's a better shooter, then maybe if he does take a step back in athleticism, he can even be a better player because of the improved shooting. That was like his big thing. Like he could be a great stretch four, but he's got to be able to hit threes. I mean, coming into the league, I actually compared him to Carmelo Anthony because he was great at getting buckets.
Yeah.
Not in the way that Carmelo. I mean, Carmelo is like a generational talent. Like there's a chance Carmelo is the greatest individual scorer of all time. I mean, he's just so good at getting points. Now, whether he's he's not a 35-point a game guy, but there's a difference in what I'm saying and like Michael Jordan.
Okay.
But I just think Carmelo's skill is just so incredible at scoring the basketball. And so I compared Jabari to him quite a bit, but I thought Jabari had a chance to be a more athletic version of that, but he needed to work on his jump shot. So, if he comes back and he can shoot, then that's great. But again, it's a big if, and he's going to be a restricted free agent next summer. So you're going to have to pay him. And I just think that his value is his trade value has got to be super low. It doesn't mean he can't help a team. It doesn't mean that the Bucks should necessarily go ahead and trade him. But I think they're going to need him to come back and play a little bit and kind of demonstrate that he's back. And you know how the ACL is.
What are the Bucks looking for?
This deal, I got to think they're looking for a point guard. I got to think they're looking for somebody that can come and play the one either next to Brogdon so he can slide over a little bit or behind Brogdon. I don't even know if they want to start Brogdon. They brought him off the bench last year for a while, and then when they started him was really when things took off.
Yeah.
And so, you and I think, are on the same page here that they should start Brogdon. Right?
Absolutely. They start Brogdon and let Dellavedova come off the bench is fine. That works, which is why I'm like, well, they need another point guard there. And they have Middleton to start alongside him. So, I guess you're talking about who else is still there off the bench for them as a guard?
Well, they've got Dellavedova. They've got.
To Jason Terry? Am I crazy?
Well, I don't know if they're bringing him back, but they've got Tony Snell.
Yeah, we've just been waiting for him to kind of take a step, and it doesn't seem like.
Tony Snell was pretty good last year. You know, he's shooting. What did he shoot last year? He shot pretty well last year.
He shot 41% from three on 4 attempts, which is good.
Yeah, and he's all arms. And so, like, he kind of fits their defensive scheme. He fits a lot. I think that Tony Snell is a good player for them. That's why they gave him $13 million a year. And so, you know, I like their 3-guard rotation of Brogdon, Snell, and Middleton. The issue comes when you get to that 3-4 spot. And, you know, I'd rather – it's tricky because Giannis could play 3-4-5. I mean, he's the nominal 1 on offense, but on defense, he's guarding 3s and 4s. You know, I think that going into this year, they're probably going to look to start. I would say Brogdon. If it was me, I'd go Brogdon, Snell, Middleton, Giannis, Thon Maker.
Okay. Yes.
Super switchy, super long. Everyone can shoot except for Giannis. I think that would be pretty good. But then your bench is just, I don't know, man. It's kind of a train wreck. Dellavedova, who really looked bad last year.
And then Greg Monroe off the bench.
Right, and he was great coming off the bench in the playoffs last year. You know, I thought that role really suited him very well. They did sign Gary Payton the second.
Yeah.
They still got John Henson, Rashad Vaughn, who hasn't shown me much, Teletovic, who, you know, is a useful player. They got a rookie that I really like, Sterling Brown. I think he's another one of those like bucket getter types, and I think that he may play a little bit this year, and at least in garbage time, maybe to the tune of like 8 minutes a game or something. But that's important. You need those guys to help fill that out because you need to sneak rest for your main guys when you can find it. And if he turns into a good player, then you hit on somebody in the second round, and that's the difference between mediocre and good in the NBA, is hitting on second rounders.
Right. And, the John Henson conundrum is just really, I don't know exactly what happened because for the first half of the year he was playing and he was starting and everything was okay. And then he just dropped off the face of the earth, and was just inactive, did not play. Only in the playoff, the last couple games of the season, they threw him out there, and then he played a couple of last games against Toronto. That's it. It's like I think he's really viable. What I had seen of him over his career was good, and I just can't figure out exactly what happened to him.
Yeah, they don't run a lot of stuff for guys hanging out in the dunker spot. Yeah. That's one thing. So they don't really utilize one of his better skills. They could have him, in the pick and roll as a roll man, but he can't really shoot. And I think that just hurts them. Because they need to play Giannis.
Yeah. And
you need to have some shooters out there, or you need Greg Monroe can play with Giannis because Greg Monroe can get a bucket. But I don't think John Henson's not. I almost called him Jan Henson. I don't think John Henson is the kind of guy you can just say, "Hey, here's the basketball, get us a bucket."
That is true. You cannot do that. But he's so long and so valuable on defense. You let him play the 5, I guess, in small ball, and let him just pick and roll, rim runs, do that whole thing. That should work for him. But again, you're talking about that's his 12 minutes a game or something.
Yeah, it's I don't know, man. It's so tricky. The whole thing is it's sort of like with Dedmon last year with the Spurs, where we didn't know why isn't he playing? Jonathan Simmons during the regular season, Dedmon during the playoffs, and it could be something like that. There's a behind the scenes issue that we don't know about. But man, I can't believe that we just talked Bucks for 5 minutes.
That was unexpected
in September. All right.
And speaking of that, I'm reminded that football season is back, which means FanDuel is ready to make each week even more exciting with a chance to cheer for your favorite players and win money doing it. Over 2.5 million players have won cash prizes playing fantasy sports on FanDuel. And you can join their ranks by heading over to FanDuel.com, click the Join Now button, and use my code CoachNick, all one word. This allows you to try FanDuel for free with no deposit required and get in on a chance to win $10,000. There is something for everyone on FanDuel. Lots of contests to choose from. So sign up now at FanDuel.com, use my code CoachNick, and get your first free contest. Void where prohibited. Well, this is as good a time as any to kind of lead into the video I'm working on this week, and which should drop tomorrow, I hope. And I have my buddy Arturo Galletti break down a serious spreadsheet of all the players from last year. And I said, hey, can you tell us, and this is a reprise of a video I did 2 seasons ago that did really, really well, which was who is the average NBA player at each position? And so I had Arturo calculate, well, what is the average production from each position? And then who is closest to that average production? And it was really fascinating. It's a really interesting thing when you start factoring in a lot of things about, what is the average? And should you be shitting on a player if he's close to the average?
Right.
And then B, what is his salary compared to the average salary at that position? Because I think that's really what's fascinating about it, right? Is that maybe you're getting a really great deal even though he's not giving you huge numbers.
Right, bang for your buck, and it matters when you're in a salary cap league. I mean, if you can get a guy who's making look at Isaiah Thomas. He had one of the greatest seasons in NBA history last year offensively. And he was making like $6.5 million, which has got to be the best production per dollar. Possibly, well, not ever, because obviously, but if you adjust for inflation and all that, just for salary cap or percentage of the salary cap, it has to be one of the most production per dollar has got to be the highest of all time.
Wait, what was he making last year?
Like 6.7 or something like that.
Is that right?
He's making a low amount and was on a decreasing deal. That's why that contract was amazing. And
not for him.
No, not for him, but he did sign it. So, So when you look at something like that, and that's one of the fascinating things. When you told me about this, I was really intrigued by it. And then when you told me some of the names, I just felt like, and I guess you're gonna say them. It's funny how a lot of these guys that are literally the league average for production, for starters, we look at as below average players, which just tells you how biased we are toward the really great players. When you see a Kevin Durant at small forward, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that, who was the average? Well, I'll let you go through the list and people can kind of judge for themselves, but.
All right, well, we have, at point guard, starting on our all-average NBA team, and there are some caveats. You had to play at least 1,500 regular season minutes, which to me was sort of like, 70 games and about 20 minutes per game minimum. That kind of gets you to some amount where you're not just some, guy who barely plays. So we eliminated some of those players, didn't play very much. And so we got, from the point guard position, Jeff Teague. Which is about right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, let's go through his numbers. He did them through per 48, so they can normalize across the board, which makes sense to me. But actually, let's do it by per game, so people can kind of grasp it a little bit better. I think auditorially with their ears. So if we have to quickly call up Jeff Teague's numbers per game, Jeff Teague averaged last year 15 points a game, 7.8 assists, 1.2 steals, 4 rebounds, and he shot 44% from the field and 36% from three. So, it's probably about your average starting point guard.
Yeah, when you said it to me originally, I was just like, it felt right. That feels about right, which is why his signing didn't really move the needle for me. I'm curious how Rubio compared to him as far as, in the rankings when working out, if he was average or below average.
He doesn't bubble up in my list of people who were close. But would you like to hear some of the other people on that list?
Yeah, let's hear it.
So what Arturo did, as he was teasing out who was closest, I do have a list of people who were in that range, but not quite as close as Jeff Teague. So from the point guard position, we have guys like, I just had a tab take over my screen here. Here we go. It was the first guy I see here from the number one position would be George Hill. Okay, and remember this is his production from last year only.
Right.
Ty Lawson, which I thought was interesting.
That is interesting.
And I kind of want to just quickly call that up because I feel like I lost track of Ty a little bit last year, how well he was doing or not. But, with Sacramento, he averaged, 9.9 points, 4.8 assists, 1 steal, 45%. Now, just to give you some context here, I can tell you what the average is. I can tell you the average is per 48, but that might be a little bit weird. But you want to hear him?
Yeah.
So it's going to be, let's see if I can do this quickly, but the average, so points per 48 for the point guard is, let me see if I can scroll here and find it in this weird order. Here it is 24.1 points per 48 from the point guard position, which is the highest of any of the 5 positions.
Wow.
Right? Now that kind of gives you some insight, right, in terms of, where the league is going.
Right. It definitely, for sure.
So
crazy. Yeah.
So that was that. And then if you want to know the assists per 48, the average for a point guard is 8.7 per 48, which probably translates, to a per game thing of 7. I need to flip these numbers a little bit, but 7 something. So if you have a point guard,
would be better.
What's that?
Yeah, per 36 would be better.
It would be better. Well, duly noted. We'll have to change these things. It wouldn't be hard, but whatever. I don't know how to do, those damn what's it called in Excel. You have to do all the different formulas. I don't know how to do that. Anyway, but okay. So we move on to the. Let's get a couple more people from the point guard position that popped up here that were nearby. Corey Joseph. That makes sense to me. Now here's another. What's that?
Corey Joseph wasn't a starter. I guess
we opened up to 1,500 minutes.
Oh,
so
okay.
So that's why.
I see.
Because neither was Ty Lawson. I don't think was starting, was he? Yeah.
No, he was not.
So he started 24 games. Ty Lawson did. But anyway, so Goran Dragic makes this list, which is pretty interesting. He's at the very bottom of the closest to average, which I thought was a little bit interesting. And remember, there's a lot of factors when you're talking about all the different stats. So certain things get weighed, and keep you down or up. But, because he did average 20 points a game in 33 minutes, but 5.8 assists, which is probably a little bit below average per game for an average starter, for an average point guard. So, interesting, huh?
Yeah, definitely.
You ready for the next position?
Yes.
Okay, shooting guard. We had Victor Oladipo.
That one's insane to me.
Why?
It's just crazy. I really, in my head, Victor Oladipo is a below average starter, but I guess that, it's right. I'll trust the numbers there, but.
Yeah, well, he did have one of his better years where he averaged 16 points a game. Although it was funny because I feel like he was better for much of this season, and then it tailed off, right? Am I crazy about that?
Yeah, he did. But remember, he had the wrist injury. So maybe he would have actually been an above-average player if not for that.
Yeah, my memory of it was the first at least half of the season with playing alongside Russ, he was on pace to have his best year ever as a pro, and these numbers, don't bear that out now. But 16 points, 2.6 assists, and 4.3 rebounds. The thing what's interesting about this as well is that you will have your stars at the shooting guard position, and you might have 4 or 5 guys who are just producing all over the place, and then it just drops off. So when you look at the other 50 or 40 guards, shooting guards in that pile, that average will slowly go down a little bit, which kind of makes sense to me. So, but that was interesting. That Victor Oladipo ended up being exactly average, but you couldn't argue that his salary is in line with that.
Right, because he's making $21 million, and that's.
Yes, I'm gonna wait. Am I on? Wait a minute. Sorry, because I just went on Oladipo's page.
Well, last season he was.
Yes.
Last season he was on his rookie deal, but he just, the rookie, his extension just kicked in.
Yeah, right. That's why I was thinking. Yeah. Okay, yeah, he goes to $21 million. So the thing though is that he was only paid $6.5 million for last year. So that's fine. That's good. Because that's the production he gave you. But now we're looking forward into next year. Is he going to make any near of a jump that's going to get him enough where it's going to be in line? Probably. I don't know. What do you think?
I would doubt it, but he will have the ball in his hands more.
Yeah.
He will have probably a higher usage rate. So if we're just looking at raw numbers, like points per game and assists and stuff like that, I mean, he should have more opportunity.
Sure.
So I guess there's a chance based on those kind of numbers. Now, I don't expect his efficiency to go up, but
Right.
I don't think that's the point of the exercise.
Yeah, I bet you he'll get to 20 points and 6 assists.
Ooh. That's interesting.
That's just primarily from usage, I bet.
Yeah, it may be. I mean, I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't trust him handling the ball in the pick and roll, so I don't know where his opportunities are going to come.
Yeah.
Like for good shots. Let's put it that way.
Fair enough. Well, here's some other guys who were in at the 2 guard position that were bubbling up to the surface here. Gerald Henderson.
Okay, that sounds right.
That's good. He was very close to being the deviation there. That would have been closer than Oladipo, but that's really good. I thought Henderson seems like an average shooting guard, solid average. Norman Powell.
Okay. Again, that sounds about right.
So we had another Raptor because we had Corey Joseph close to being the average point guard, and then Norman Powell is close to being the average shooting guard. Another 2 guard. What's that?
Are you telling me that the Raptors are going to have a lot of very average players?
You'll have to stay tuned for a few more minutes to find out. We have Tim Hardaway Jr., which is another one. Makes sense. He started coming on a little bit at the end of the year, but I think overall, average. And then I think his contract is probably really good too.
Ooh, he just signed that 4 years, $71 million. So it felt a little high, but I think he's not a bad player. And I mean, the Knicks, let's just be honest, is probably the best money that they've spent on a free agent in a while, even though it was maybe an overpay. So
yeah, but remember, for last year, what they got out of him, average production, they paid him $2.2 million, which is fantastic. Because the average salary, we haven't finished calculating that, but I'm going to call it up too. But the average salary for a shooting guard has to be $7, $8, $9 million, right?
Yeah, probably.
So they're paying him a fraction of that. So that's a good value there. And then Nick Stauskas actually comes in is somewhere in the area, as does KCP, interestingly enough, for shooting guards.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the Lakers will have their eye on that, whether or not the KCP can just get out of a bad situation and play better.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have a little bit more space on the floor than he had in Detroit. So hopefully those shooting numbers start to go up.
We shall see. This is his make or break year, and I got to tell you, the Lakers did some sneaky stuff. I mean, literally they did some sneaky stuff, and then they also snuck in a couple of deals here that I think
Brook Lopez was to me like the bigger deal. Like he's good.
Yeah, he's good. Kentavious Caldwell was good. Lonzo Ball is going to be good. They still have their Randalls and their Clarksons and their Larry Nances. They're going to have a 7-8 man rotation there. That's going to be good. Better.
Yeah, I agree.
Exciting. Something. I don't know. And Lord knows Laker fans are desperate for it. So, okay, are we ready for the small forwards?
Yes.
This is where it got a little bit weird to me, but the closest to average small forward that Arturo was able to identify through the numbers was DeMarre Carroll.
As the average small forward.
Yeah.
Which to me, I guess, kind of makes a lot of sense, right? Like he's not this huge needle mover.
Nope.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. It seems right.
It kind of. Here's what's weird about it, though, because when you think about the small forward, it's the stars of the game. It's LeBron, KD, Melo. I know I'm missing at least one person who's a small forward. No?
Kawhi.
So it's like, but I think the small forward position might be front loaded, and I feel like once you get past those 5 or 6 or whatever we're talking about, the numbers drop to some degree, and so then you're left at. Actually, I'm kind of curious if for points per 48. Can you want to guess which position scores the least? The average.
Small forward.
It actually is a small forward. It's close, but 19.8 versus 20.9 for the power forward. With those two are close. So yeah, if you're an average player at each position, the small forward is going to be the lowest scoring per 48, which I also find really interesting.
Because you've got so many high scoring, at least high scoring small forwards. We're biased toward them, right? This is pretty good about showing where our biases lie as far as players. Again, like Damari Carroll being average, I would never consider him just a trash player, right? Like,
Right.
And in my head, he would be above average. And maybe this is where you look at the positional, how we are sort of biased toward which positions are more valuable. You know,
Right.
It's a wing league, and so we look at like a small forward who plays defense is maybe a little bit more valuable than like Oladipo, who's a 2 that sort of plays good defense but doesn't bring much on offense, at least in my head story, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm bummed about that because I mean Damari Carroll at the end of his Atlanta run, like I would have argued he was the best player in that team, pound for pound across the board, defense and offense combined, and yet
then he got hurt.
Yeah. And I don't know if he's ever really recovered. I mean, he played a lot of games and he played a lot of minutes in Toronto, but like I have no mental picture of him in my head right now of him doing anything while watching those games. He just was quiet and silent, and it's too bad. And you know what? I can see that because the way the offense was designed, the other 2 guys are getting so much of the usage. There's just not a lot to go around for him. And when he did well, he got up close to 20 points a game at the end there with Atlanta because the ball was moving. So I don't know. It's kind of too bad, but because he is probably better than average, I would say, at his height when he's not hurt and he's playing the way he can.
Right. Yeah. It's a bummer. I mean, the knee injuries really kind of. Yeah, it kind of sapped a lot out of him, and I guess we'll see how he does in Brooklyn. I mean, they could use some average players, to be honest.
Absolutely. And by the way, Brooklyn's another one of those sneaky teams that, like, it became kind of a hot take right after Simmons, like, oh, they're going to win more games. That pick isn't going to be as valuable to the Cavs as everyone thinks. But when the dust settled and you kind of look at it and you look at who they picked up and what they have, like, and if Jeremy Lin can stay healthy and those guys stay healthy, like, yeah, they can improve by 10 wins.
Yeah,
and 10 wins gets them the 7th, 8th pick probably.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
I mean, sorry, 10 more wins gets them in anyway. Well, are you ready for the power forward position?
Yes.
The most average power forward in the NBA last year with minimum 1,500 minutes is Markieff Morris.
Again, it just sounds right.
Yeah, we need that bullseye sound effect.
Right. Yeah, that's like dead on. Like if you just asked me to pick, he definitely would be one of the handful of guys I would pick. Who else was around there?
Okay, so for the power forward position here, let's see here. Nikola Mirotic. Interesting. There's not a lot of power forwards for some reason. One of them, he must.
I'm surprised Mirotic is around average. I would have thought he was below average, but
Yeah, he's not that close. His deviation is down the list a little bit, but he was in the realm. And then a guy who was even farther away, but still in the conversation would be Jabari Parker. Interestingly enough, although did Jabari play? Wait, did he play 1,500 minutes last year?
Yeah, he got hurt kind of late.
Okay, yeah,
which is again another reason why the knee surgery is kind of a bummer, right? Because he won't be back until I'm assuming January.
Yeah, that's right. He played 51 games, 1,700 minutes. He just barely made it. And his per 36 numbers, I don't know if you looked at them, but it was 21 points, 6.5 rebounds, 3 assists. And he was shooting really well, at least from the 2-point land. And his per game, he was scoring 20 a game. I remember now. Yeah, he was doing well. So right, it's a bummer and a half. When is he projected to get back?
I would assume January, but I don't know. I haven't read anything. I know that he's doing some basketball stuff.
Right. So that's interesting though that he ended up being average per 48 because those numbers are pretty damn good. And usually the power forward position I don't think is that productive these days. But and he wasn't that close to average. He was sort of at the end just barely bubbled up. But either way, that's what Arturo was saying. And that's what I'm going with.
Yeah, I'll trust the numbers.
All right. So all right, and then we have center Jonas Valanciunas. Again, that kind of hits the nail on the head, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, although I would have been biased to say below average.
Yes. Okay. Would I say that? Let me see here. Well, his numbers per game at least, because he doesn't get that much. He gets 12 points, 9.5 rebounds, and that's about it. Doesn't do anything else. It gets less than a block a game. So I don't know. It seems about right to me.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not shocked. I just, in my head, I look at him as below average as a center. But then again, yeah. No, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, that hit the nail on the head for me too. And I'm just kind of curious. The points per 48 from the center position is where is that? Crap. Here it is. From the center position is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is 23.1. And that's also kind of weird to me. I'm gonna have to ask Artur about some of these numbers because that seems high from the center position, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's you know what? So there's something might be off with this only because it's the second highest position. Well, I'll have to go through it, but I mean, look, the spreadsheet is very thorough. It's got all the information on there, so it's just numbers and math. But I mean, right? Who is scoring a lot from the center position? Unless unless he's going to try and count like Durant's minutes at center that they count, but I don't think so, right? No, I don't think it works that way.
I don't think so. Yeah, that just doesn't sound right.
All right. Well, anyway, Jonas Valanciunas at the very least is the average for me. So we will have an interesting video coming up hopefully tomorrow on this, and we will see the reaction there. The only other center that popped up in our thing that I have on my list here is Pau Gasol.
As average.
Yeah.
Which that's interesting to me. I would have thought above, but
okay. Well, his numbers weren't gaudy by any stretch. 12 points, kind of the same as Valanciunas.
But how many minutes was he playing?
Yeah, 25.
Right. Yeah,
he probably barely makes the cut on. Right. So yeah, he barely makes the cut on minutes. Okay. So that is part of it for sure. But 12 points, 8 rebounds. But again, we should do this by per 48. So either way, interesting stuff. Yeah. And that is it. Those are the most average players in the NBA.
Wow. And we've almost made it to our division previews.
Yeah, right.
Run out of stuff to talk about.
How many wins do you think a team with Teague, Oladipo, Carroll, Morris, and Valanciunas wins?
That sounds like a 40 to 42 win team.
Yeah, right. Like kind of, yeah. A good coach. They play the right way. They can play over their heads a little bit. Yeah, I would say it's about 40, somewhere between 40 and 42 wins. So that certainly is the eye test. And by the way, I know that Arturo definitely values win shares and all those kind of things when he's calculating all these numbers. And so I have to imagine that was a big influence in how he's adjusting these things. It's like, what is that 41 win team?
Yeah, I think that's about what you would have if you had those guys, somewhere between 40 and 42.
Yeah. Oh, actually, he did. He has a record, a winning prediction here, where it says 44.6 wins, which I think is a little bit on the positive side there, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Dave, another great podcast. Anything that you want to shout out to us?
No, just make sure you subscribe to this podcast and rate and review it on iTunes, and subscribe to my podcast on the NBA with Dave DeFore. I did a great pod with CJ Miles last week, which was a lot of fun. He was super candid and personable, and I mean he was awesome actually. And then I'm going to be starting some of my division previews with some local guys starting next week, and then I guess we're going to start our division previews soon, right?
We are. The kids are finally all in school starting tomorrow, and I can get back to my normal schedule of just cranking all this stuff out. So yeah, we will get on that ASAP, and that'll probably keep us busy for a while.
Yeah, that's the hope. And then and I'm going to be doing those some of them from the road because I'm going to start this huge road trip up to Canada and around. So make sure you check out that Instagram for all those photos I'll be posting.
It's tough when you're a spy.
Yeah. Your theory. Yeah. I love that. Oh yeah, we gotta at some point before the season starts, we've got to do this conspiracy pod where we just talk about all these random conspiracies. I mean, Michael Jordan was definitely suspended for gambling, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's a little bit tough because his father was murdered, and so that just sort of that threw a whole bunch of different stuff going on in the background too. But you're right, and it never made much sense to me that his biggest reason for wanting to retire that first time was, spend time with my family, and then he's out playing baseball, a couple months later. So that was a little bit strange. So yeah, there's definitely some weird stuff there. But we have to do that, and also all the weird injury conspiracies over the years too. So yeah, we'll get to that ASAP before the season starts for sure.
Yeah, awesome.
All right, cool. Well, another great one, and thanks for coming on, Dave, with me today. And don't forget, sports fans, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You in? Are you in, Dave?
Yes, I am.